Hello, good evening to each and everyone present here. I am Maria Rangwala and today I'm going to explain you the topic HTML, CSS and JavaScript, that is basically the introduction to web technologies. So let's go ahead with HTML. What is HTML? HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Hypertext means text inside the text. So when we write a text and through which we can be redirected to another text, markup means highlighting a particular text and it is a markup language. So basically HTML is not a programming language but a markup language. It is not case sensitive. HTML is used for structuring of a website and basically defining how a website will look on the browser. So let's go ahead with the structure of HTML. So basically, the structure of HTML includes doc type HTML. So what does doc type HTML do? Basically, doc type HTML tells us what the file is or what the version of the file is. Then HTML is a root element of the file which tells us that it is an HTML file. Then the header text which stores the metadata which appears on top of a website. Then comes the title which basically comes at the top of the tab and tells us what the name or what the particular website is going to do or web page is going to do. Then the body consists of everything that will appear on the browser or the document area, and the HTML closing tag tells us that this is the end of the HTML document. So basically, now talking about the syntax. So how do we define the syntax of an HTML document? So starting with the opening tag, then comes the closing tag. In between, we write the entire content, which is this one. This is the entire content. If you want to add comments which tells us what particular thing is doing or what a function is doing, then there is a button tag again. Then in this we have class, which is an attribute and equals to many is its value. Similarly, image is another tag. It is a single tag, empty tag, and div is a paired tag, and similarly, button is also a paired tag, and div in itself is a block element. What does a block element mean? It takes the full width of an website. So basically, div takes the entire width. Then comes image and everything. These are also the div block elements, and we have inline elements which takes the space which is only required. So here class is an attribute, many is a value. Similarly, source is the attribute and me.png is its value. So here source is a URL which is a relative which is an absolute URL and relative URL. So it is a relative URL which we have on a document. So we can see that there was a tag name. Here ID is an attribute. This is the comment. Then there is a tag, text tag, basically the content. Then button, and then self-closing tag, which is an empty tag, and then the closing of the tag. Now moving on to some of the main tags of HTML, as I discussed div, it is a container tag block element which takes the entire width. That is basically assigns a block to us in our web page. Then image tag is used to attach images in our document. Anchor tag is used to refer to another pages and provide references or href, redirection to another pages. So here we use an attribute called as href, which basically allows us to link a document to another one. So as you can see, href, we write it like this in double quotes and we write the link to which we want to redirect. Then a paragraph text is basically used to add the paragraph to our document. It is another essential tag and which is also a paired tag. It has opening and closing tag both. Then h1 to h6 we have heading tags h1 to h6. H1 is used for the most important titles and everything, and h6 is used for the least important ones. Then we have an input tag which is used in our forms, which basically allows us to take value from the user. Then style is used to provide inline CSS to our document and also used to provide internal CSS to our document. Then script tag is used to attach a JavaScript file and also the JavaScript code in our file. Then span tag is an inline tag which allows us to limit our content only to the space which is required and not extra space by providing anything extra. So now coming on to the HTML table tag. It allows us to create table in HTML. So in HTML tag, we have a table row tag which is tr, which allows us to create a table row in which we can create table data and table heads. So table heads are basically used to give the headings of the table. And then we have table data tag, which is basically all the content which we have in our table. Apart from that, you can provide call span, call row. So basically, call span allows us to merge columns, and call row allows us to merge rows. And we also have cell spacing and cell padding. So what is the difference between cell spacing and cell padding? Cell spacing is basically the spaces between two cells, and cell padding is the space between the border of the cell and the content of the cell. Okay. Now moving ahead with the syntax, as you can see, we can also add here on top a caption which basically tells what our table contains. So the table tag, its starting and the ending tag in which all the tags are contained. So we first describe the table row, then the table heads which we want to add, then the table row and the table data, whatever we want to add, entries and everything. We also have some emit abbreviations for that. So if you want to make a table, so basically we'll write table, then greater than sign, which basically tells that we are entering into the table, then table rows, then going into the table data, as many table data as we want to create. So we'll add multiply. For this one, I'll add a multiply 3. So it will create 3 table data, that is basically 3 columns. And if I multiply the whole by 2, so it'll create 2 rows. Okay. So this is an emit abbreviation for table. Now moving on to forms. Forms are basically used to take input from the user, and it is also used in JavaScript implementation. So basically when we want to create forms and take input from user, we use the form tag. So form tag basically starts with the form tag. Then we have input fields, so in which we have an input tag which allows us to take values based on its type. It can be text, number, text, radio, checkboxes, and many more. And we also have a text area which allows us to take whole paragraphs and more content. Basically, input takes less content and text area takes more content. Now coming on to labels, why do we write labels in our form? So labels allows us to make the form more readable, and when we are using reader for users, so the labels are easily readable by the screen reader. So it allows the readers who are using screen reader to read it more easily. It also helps the people who are not able to touch small areas and find it difficult, like the radio button, checkboxes. So if they even touch the label, so then they are easily able to access the radios and checkboxes. So we use labels for easy access, and for those people who have a bit of a problem in things and basically precision and stuff. So now there's a syntax for an login form which I have kept it here. So I'll explain it to you. Basically, doctype HTML tells us what type of HTML file is or its version. Then HTML is the root element, then head, then its title, it is a login form. Then coming on to the body, which is the most important part. First we have a div which we have assigned a whole column. Then we have given heading to our form, that is login. Then form. Here the action is a method. Here action is a way, so when it gets implemented and when a form gets submitted, it will be redirected to some other file, or some other action will be performed on it, which is shown through the action attribute. And then we have a method. So the for the security purposes, we use the post method when we are logging in. So we have post method, get method. All these methods are used to get values from the user and take values from the user. So we have a use label which says username. Then we have a text. So text basically takes strings. So here we'll give a string that is of a username. Then we'll enter the password. So here the type is password. So basically that the data gets implemented as a password, and we cannot you see the values until and unless we click on the I button. So basically it is another type in law form that gives us. So we have various types, that is email, text, number, email, text, number, password, date, all these kind of types we have through which we can customize our input. And we have finally the button which is type submit. So through this, when we click on it, our form will get submitted and we'll get the response. Now moving ahead, what is CSS? CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. So in Cascading Style Sheets, we basically provide CSS to our, or we basically we can say styling to our page and how beautiful we can make it look. So in CSS, we can implement cascading. So what is cascading? So when a parent element is present there, so whatever attributes or whatever the properties we apply on it, it gets implemented to its child as well. So that's what we are called as cascading. And until and unless it will be implemented, until and unless the child is not given some new attributes from our side, so the cascading is followed in such manner. Now moving ahead, what is the syntax for CSS? So basically we first write the selector, which is here the star one. This is our selector. Then we write the attribute, that is color. Here is our attribute and its value. And the semicolon gives us a declaration. So basically this is our syntax for the CSS. Now moving ahead with the types of CSS. We basically have three types of CSS, that is inline CSS, internal CSS and external CSS. What does the inline CSS do? Inline CSS is used when we have a very little page and we want to give unique, and each and every element has to get a unique CSS. So we just write the CSS within the tag, opening tag itself. We write the style attribute and we put the equal to sign, and in double quotes we provide them the properties. Then in the internal CSS, within the same page, we apply the CSS. So we put a style tag in the heading section of a header section, head element. We put the style tag, and through that we implement the CSS in our document. And then comes the external CSS. So external CSS uses an external style sheet which is linked to our main HTML code through a link where we give the relationship style sheet and then the reference to whatever our style sheet is. So as you can see here, the href tells us that our sheet's name is styles.css. Here the relation is told that it is a style sheet and the type is text or CSS. So it is given within the head tag. Now moving ahead, what are the selectors in CSS as I mentioned? So we have various selectors in CSS. Universal selector is basically a selector that tells that this CSS will be implemented on the entire page of our code. So it tells that it will be implemented in all the elements on the page. Then the type selector is basically when we use a particular HTML tag or an element selector, I can also tell it. So it basically selects if we want to apply it on H1 tag of our document, we'll put H1. If you want to apply on the paragraph, we will put P. If you want to apply it on a form, we will put form. If you want to apply it on an input field, we will put input. So basically it takes the element, we just mention the element, and then in the curly braces we write the properties and attributes. And then we come with this class selector. So class is basically we give it to the user while we are writing. So it basically comes in like tag, then we write class is equals to, then in double quotes we'll write whatever our class name is. So example, I'll take I1 as my class name. So in this we can, in this when we call it, so we'll write dot class name, that is one, and then we'll apply our CSS. Similarly in ID selector, here we write ID then equals to and double quotes whatever our ID name is, and then it will get implemented. So when we are applying class in ID selector, so ID is given more preference because it is unique and it is applied on only one element. Meanwhile, same class can be applied on multiple elements. Okay. Now moving ahead, we have various fields like colors, background color. So through color, we can change the color of our text, how a text will appear. Then through background color, we'll change the entire background of our document. Then through background image, we can apply images on the background of our document. Then through font, we can change the font of our document. Through border, we can apply border and various styling. So border width, we can give it to it. What will be our border style? It will be dotted, stay, it will be none, it will be solid, whatever it will be. And also its color. Then border top, so we can also specify that what we want to do: border top, border bottom, border left, border right. That's also an option. Then border radius allows us to provide curves on the edges of our border. So if we provide border radius to 50%, it allows us to make a circle. Then comes margin, padding. It tells us what the difference will be. I'll explain margin and padding further when I'll go to box model. And then we can provide height, text alignment, where it will be aligned, box shadow, how the shadows will appear on our box, then the cursor, what kind of cursor we want when we hover onto something, then what will be the type of displaying on our screen, display inline, block. So inline basically will display it in the inline pattern. Block will take the entire block of our document. So now coming on to the positions in CSS. So what is the positioning in the CSS? It basically tells us how a div or our element will be placed in our CSS, in our document. So static positioning basically tells us that the flow of the work will not be affected, and our object will be placed with reference to the normal flow of the page. There, it will not be affected from the top, bottom, left, right, anywhere. Then comes the relative positioning. So in this we can refer a element with reference to its own position, which was its normal position, and we can provide it top, bottom, left, right, and we can move it. Then coming on to the fixed position, it is with reference to the viewport. We can provide a fixed position to an element by aligning it to the top, bottom, anywhere, and it will not get affected. Its position will get fixed and it will not move. Either our cursor moves or anything like that. Then comes the absolute positioning. In this, the positioning of our element is done with reference to its ancestor. So whatever his nearest ancestor will be, with reference to that, it will get position. And this, it allows us to overlap the elements because it is being referenced with reference to its ancestor. Then finally comes the sticky. So we can assign its position from top, bottom, anywhere, and it'll get sticked onto the position based on our scrollings. Now moving on to the box model in CSS. What is the box model in CSS? Basically, box model is containing our entire elements of the CSS in a box. So I'll explain it with the help of an diagram. So basically, it has four properties in it: content, padding, margin, border, and I'll also consider two more: width and height. So basically, we have a content here, which is the blue area. Then padding is basically the space between the content and the border. That is our padding. Then a margin is the space between two divs. So consider if we have same div here as well. So I'll just show you by drawing. So if I have another div here, so the space between these two will be the margin. Similarly, if this is my content and this is a border, so the space here will be my padding. All right, and we can also provide the height and width. So the entire vertical length will be our height and the crosswise length will be our width. So this is basically the box model in CSS. Now moving on to JavaScript. So what is JavaScript and why do we use JavaScript? So JavaScript basically provides logic to our logic to our code, to our HTML file. When we are implementing a form or anything like that, we apply JavaScript so that it has some logic. Like otherwise, what will be the need of making a page and login thing if it's not taking values? So all that work is done by JavaScript. It provides interactivity to our code. So basically, like I said, user can put its values, get feedbacks from us by getting logged in. Then dynamic content. Basically, in HTML, we cannot make dynamic content. With the help of JavaScript, we can make our website dynamic. Apart from that, we have various frameworks based on JavaScript: Next.js, React.js, Angular, various other, we have more. And apart from that, it allows event handling. So what is basically event handling? I'll explain it later on. And it also allows us the use of APIs, that is application programming interface. So now coming on to data types in JavaScript. So we have two types of data types in JavaScript, which basically tells us what the value of variables will store. So we have primitive data types and non-primitive data types. And primitive data types, we have number, string. So what is number? Basically, it takes integer values or precision double values. So these are primitive data types, number. Then comes string. Anything that is characters or alphabets, letters, words, these are all stored in string. By default, everything is string in JavaScript. Then we have Boolean values true, false, null type, which has only one value, null. Then undefined values, it also takes undefined values, it takes symbols, unique identifiers, then it has a built-in object of begin. Now we have, as I said, we have primitive data type null and unidentified. So here is an example that we have taken let, and then we have assigned it the value null for now, and later on it will take value and give us the value. And also we have taken a let a. So here the let a is not defined yet. It'll get defined later on through a function or anything like that. So right now, when we'll check it on console.log, it will give the type undefined. And similarly, when we check let age is equals to null, it will give us the data type null. Now moving on to non-primitive data type. Non-primitive data type, we have objects. So basically, objects consist of key value pairs that store various data types and functions. So in our JavaScript, we have objects which allows us to store key value functions. And apart from that, there is console, window, and document objects in our JavaScript, which basically provides us alerts and everything like that. Now we have non-primitive data types, more non-primitive data types, which is array, as we all know, which is used to store same type of data. Then functions, and here we define a function by using the keyword function in front of our function's name. So we write function, then function name. It can be of various type. It can be named function, unnamed function. It can have parameters, not having parameters, with return value, without return value. And we also have non-primitive data types like date. So here we can also access the date by using the function directly date, and also can get regular expressions and patterns for pattern matching. Now variables in JavaScript. As I was mentioning, the data types are used with the variables. So we have three types of variables in JavaScript: const, let, and var. So where variable can be defined globally anywhere in the scope of our code. So it does not have to be present in a particular block or anything. It is defined globally throughout our code. Then comes the let, which is defined inside a block, and its accessibility and its what do we say? Its power exists only inside that block. Outside that block, a let variable cannot be accessed. And then comes the const variable. So once its value is assigned, it cannot be changed. So now moving on to the DOM model in JavaScript. So basically what is a DOM model? It is a document object model which allows us to manipulate our data and allows us to work with it. So we can do it through get element by ID, get element by class name. It helps us in event handling. It helps us when our mouse moves. So in handling, we have on mouse move, on mouse click, on double click, on click. So all these helps us to manipulate our HTML and CSS with the help of JavaScript. And our DOM model has a tree-like structure. So basically HTML is a root document, then we have head and body in which we can make changes. In head we have title, meta, and here we have various elements like h1, p, unordered list in which we have various lists and everything like that. So now moving on, how do we write comments in JS? So for writing comments in JS, so if we want to write a single line comment, we'll use double backslash. And if you want to write multi-line comments, then you'll backslash asterisk sign, then again an asterisk sign at the end of the content and the backslash. Similarly, while writing comments in HTML, we write it like this by giving And by when the code gets emptied, we just do it like this. And there is also a shortcut for writing commenting out of stuff, that is control plus backslash. With this, it's all from my side on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Thank you for listening to me so carefully. Thank you, guys.